Douk Audio recently sent me their new T4 Pro Phono preamp. And I'll be honest, when I first looked at this product, I immediately assumed I was going to dislike it. Why? Three reasons. One, it actually offers more features than a traditional phono preamp. Two, it's only $70, which is cheaper than a traditional phono preamp. And three, that means whenever I have a product that has more features for a lower price, it usually has to sacrifice somewhere, and that's often sound. So, does the T4 Pro try to do too much at too low of a price? Or will this little phono preamp surprise me with its impressive sound? There's only one way to find out. Okay, I'll admit it, I have a pretty strong bias against audio products that are trying to do too many things instead of one great thing. Have you ever had one of those days at the office where you did a lot of little tasks, but you just kind of did them all okay, and you didn't feel at the end of the day like you accomplished one great thing? That's what I think of when I see a product like this. I don't want it to do a lot of things okay. I want it to just do one great thing. And I think my concern is with the T4 Pro is coming from the fact that I have owned plenty of phono preamps over the years. For instance, this Project Phono Box, and they only do one thing. They amplify the small audio signal from the needle on my turntable to line level so that I can hear it. Now, at first, I assumed the T4 Pro was a traditional phono preamp until I got it out of the box and started to set it up and realized there's a lot more going on the front than I expected. For instance, on the far left of the unit, there's an auxiliary input where you can connect a 3.5 millimeter cable, which can connect another audio device. There's also a headphone output, so you can connect a pair of headphones. Far right on the unit is a knob which powers the unit off and on and controls the volume. All this to say, this means you can actually use a T4 Pro as more than just a phono preamp. You can connect another device and a pair of headphones, almost put it on your desktop, and use it in sort of a traditional preamp fashion, which is vastly different than all the other traditional phono preamps that I've used. Now, I'm already worried at the added extra features, and then I realized that the T4 Pro is coming in at $70, while the Project Phono Box is coming in at $130. So, based on my previous bias, anytime an audio product has more features at a lower price, it usually sacrifices sound quality. So, we got to jump in and compare both of these units and see how the T4 Pro compares with the Project Phono Box. Now, comparing these two phono preamps visually, you'll obviously notice that the T4 Pro comes with a set of tubes. Now, those are JAN 5464 tubes supplied by Douk Audio. The second thing you'll notice is that the T4 Pro can only handle a moving magnet cartridge, while the Phono Box by Project can actually handle moving magnet and moving coil. And last but not least, and again, pretty obvious, the Project Phono Box is just a phono preamplifier. There are no added extra features like a volume knob or an aux input or headphone output that comes with the T4 Pro. Now, for the turntable used in comparing these two phono preamps, I used a Technics SLD1 that I've recently repaired and refurbished. And in that process, I just put a budget Audio-Technica cartridge on it. It's the blue one. You can find it on Amazon for like 30 bucks. I thought it would make more sense to use a budget cartridge on a turntable for the sound comparison rather than a $200 Shibata stylus that I have included on my vintage Pioneer PL 560 turntable. I think that these phono preamps lean more towards beginner setups with beginner cartridges, so I felt like this was the proper thing to use in this comparison. Now, immediately I was surprised at how well the T4 Pro sounded. I've had some of these affordable phono preamps in before, and they oftentimes sound hollow, but not with the T4 Pro. The bass was present, and it had an overall good soundstage. Now, the Project has a very lively, punchy sound to it. Just one of the reasons I enjoy throwing it into my system every now and then. What I noticed is that the T4 Pro sound in direct comparison with the Project was just a little looser. For instance, when listening to Linda Ronstadt's You're No Good, the vocals had more space around them with the Project, while the T4 Pro allowed them to sit back a little bit more in the mix. There is a part in this song where the string section specifically has a crescendo where it starts soft and grows loud. The project really amplified that sound properly, meaning the strings sounded soft and then grew to a louder volume, while the T4 Pro basically just kept that string section at the same level. Now, while listening to another one of my favorite LPs, The Great Rock Pile featuring Dave Edmunds and Nick Lowe, again, I noticed that the project vocals were a little bit more forward and the bass was just a little bit more controlled. Again, overall, the T4 Pro, while it has great bass and a great soundstage, it's just a little looser than the project. Now, at this point, you're probably wondering, did I roll the tubes in the T4 Pro, i.e. did I change them out to try to get a different sound signature? And I did. The manual actually provides a list of tubes that you can substitute in, and I substituted in a pair of 6.4K tubes, and I'll be honest with you, I just didn't hear that much sound difference. The tubes in these phono preamps are really used more as buffers. They don't provide that traditional 3D holographic sound that a traditional tube preamp or amplifier would sound. So whenever I change the tubes out in these, I just can never really hear that much difference in sound. I think what surprised me the most about the T4 Pro and challenged the bias that I had at the beginning of this video was that right out of the box, I actually enjoyed the sound. Sure, it sounds different than the Project, but not in a bad way. Where the Project is a little bit more punchy and lively, the T4 Pro is just a little bit more loose, and it makes listening to records enjoyable and a lot of fun. And this leads me to who I think should actually buy the T4 Pro. And I think the perfect buyer for this would be anyone using the internal phono preamp on their turntable. That's right, they're probably a beginner that bought this turntable. It's a more modern one. It's got a little switch in the back and you can switch it over, and it uses the internal phono preamp in that turntable, which, to be honest with you, will get the job done, but they don't always sound as great as using an external phono preamp. And if you were interested in just getting even better vinyl playback from that modern turntable, try switching the internal preamp off of that turntable and connecting your table to the T4 Pro instead. I really think you'll be surprised by just how much better the T4 Pro will make your vinyl playback sound. Now, the other people that I think would benefit from the T4 Pro is anyone using maybe a $12 to $15 phono preamp that they found on Amazon, and maybe they bought it just to get up and running. Definitely not here to judge you for having those. I've had them in the past, but they just really get the job done and don't actually do the best job in making your records sound great. By upgrading to the $70 T4 Pro, I do think you'll hear a much greater difference in sound on your vinyl playback than using that cheap phono preamp. Now, with all that being said, I do think the strength of the T4 Pro lies in vinyl playback. I use the headphone output and it's functional, but not great. The auxiliary input is the same. It's functional, but again, I don't really need to connect another device to the auxiliary input because I use a traditional preamp. So these are features that I just didn't really need. Thankfully, even though Douk included them, they didn't degrade the sound quality. Just always think that audio companies should just not get too greedy and add a bunch of extra features that we may not actually really need. Well, there you have it. That's been my experience with the T4 Pro. Now, you may be wondering just why you would want a phono preamp, and definitely one of the reasons you may is because you have a small Class D amplifier that you're using to power your speakers, but it doesn't have a phono input. If you'd like to watch a video on how to connect a Class D amplifier with a phono preamp so that you can get vinyl playback in that system, you can do so by watching this video here.